evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to our City Council meeting for September 6th, and we will start with a roll call.
Councilmember Dennehy?
Here.
Councilmember Schmischer?
Here.
Councilmember B. Smith? Absent. Councilmember Stein?
Here.
Councilmember Tracy?
Here.
Councilmember Worthington? Absent. Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick?
He's here too.
Mayor Smith?
Here. Let's all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do we have any council member announcements? Councilmember Schmischer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to give a quick update on the Trail Use Policy Committee. It's met again. We have a pretty solid draft policy that's currently out for review by all committee members. We anticipate hopefully having a final version that will come before council hopefully in the next month or two. So just huge thanks to Rex and the Parks Department and all of the citizens serving on that committee.
Wonderful. Tim and Andrea, I believe you met with the Department of Wildlife last week. Do you have anything you'd like to report on that?
Sure. We, after some discussion and listening to their input, and we had two from here, from this area, and then one representative, I think he's their district manager, from Salida came, so they were really interested in helping us with this. And we, it looks like we're gonna hunt our way out of this. So we're gonna try to get more information out to hunters that sign up for this area, where there are parcels of private land, and put them in contact with owners of private land where they can hunt. So that's kind of where we left it. Anything else, Tim?
No, I think it's, we're working on something, and, we're hoping we can, down the road, maybe we can speak with landowners who have a problem with the deer and they would volunteer and to allow hunters on their ground, obviously just one hunter at a time, but make it real simple. The Division of Wildlife it knows there's a problem here. But there is a lot of tags. There's not going to be more issuance of tags. There's the numbers are there. The problem is just the harvest isn't. So, maybe we can just do a few things to open up some more ground so people have more opportunities to hunt in town.
Yeah, that makes sense, because really, that's a pretty easy hunt. It could be be pretty easy to get your prey.
And what we learned about the chemical option for birth control is it's very toxic. It's toxic, and women cannot be involved at all in the application or management of it because it affects female humans too. So that's probably the worst, and I don't think none of us really feel like we're at that point where we need to do that.
Okay, interesting.
And Madam Mayor, we've got the general government meeting tomorrow night. Since this is a holiday meeting here, are we meeting at 5 or 6?
Tomorrow will be 6 o'clock.
Tomorrow will be 6 o'clock. Okay, at 6 o'clock, and we're going to be talking about the balanced scorecard, which is a method for aligning and measuring city departments' performance against goals.
Thank you. And Councilmember Dennehy, thank you for joining me on the radio tomorrow. 8:30 in the morning, we'll be on Carol N if you want to tune in. Yeah. Okay, well, it looks like we're ready to do a special proclamation. And this is a designation as Suicide Prevention Month. And before we read the proclamation, I would like to invite Jessica Cobbler to please come forward and address City Council. We're really grateful to have you here and for all the work you've been doing for awareness in our community.
Thank you.
So thank you always for welcoming me and having me here to do the proclamation. I really appreciate it. I'd like to share again why I'm involved with suicide awareness and the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. As always, as I'm preparing for this speech, a couple of things I'd like to start off with. I'm not an expert. I'm just a mom who lost her son to suicide. This never gets any easier for me. And honestly, how could it? It's been 8 years. I still get nervous, anxious. I want to cancel last minute. Thought about it today, like I just can't do it. But I know how important it is, and I know why I do what I do, and I will always show up, even though I know I'm gonna cry and have tears in my eyes. Doing this for me continues to be part of my healing process as well. My son Dalton died by suicide on June 18th, 2014. He was just 18 years old. He was such a good person. He was kind, he was funny, he was shy, he was smart, he was a great friend, a great brother, son, grandson, and as you can see, he was very handsome. Less than a month prior to his death, he graduated the 2014 high school valedictorian from Florence High School, a goal he had set for himself and worked very hard to achieve. He had also been accepted to and was preparing to attend the Colorado School of Mines that fall to pursue a degree in chemical engineering. Our plans were to go shopping for dorm room stuff, but we never made it. I would like to share again part of what he wrote in his valedictorian speech. I want us, the class of 2014, to be remembered for years to come. Listen to your voice, your own soul. Too many people listen to the noise of the world instead of being themselves. Being different is never a bad thing. I was labeled a socially awkward nerd throughout most of high school. Although this may be truthful to an extent, look at me now. I'm on top and I'm different in many ways from those of you in front of me. Take a chance and be yourself, and remember that we all go through a dark, scary tunnel before we reach the sunlight at the other end. I wish he could have waited for his sunlight. He also talked about the saying, the grass is always greener on the other side, and quoted Robert Fulghum. The grass is not, in fact, greener on the other side of the fence. Fences have nothing to do with it. The grass is greenest where it is watered. When crossing over fences, carry water with you and tend to the grass wherever you may be. Suicide wasn't a part of my vocabulary 8 years, 2 months ago. I've said that word thousands of times since then. Since then, my mission has been a few things. First and most important, to make sure Dalton is never forgotten. I say this in every speech I've given, and I know it may sound silly, but it's one of my biggest fears since he died. Make sure that one day that he died does not define his life. He lived and he did a lot in the short time he was here. To be his voice and be a voice for mental health and suicide, and work towards ending the stigma of those two words. To let you know that suicide does not discriminate. If this can happen to my family, it can happen to yours. To try and help and give hope so that another family does not have to go through what my family has to go through. Please remember, as we talk about suicide, that the statistics, the lines on the graph, the push pins on a map represent someone. A son, a daughter, a brother, a sister, a mom, a dad, a friend, a coworker. They represent Dalton, Lindsay, Cheryl, AJ, Charlie, Kobe, Hannah, Palmer, Seth, Kyle, Maverick, Abby, Ryan, Brody, Thomas, Quentin, and all those lost to suicide. Part of my mission today here too is to invite you all to our 6th annual Out of the Darkness Community Walk hosted by the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. The walk takes place this Saturday, September 10th at Centennial Park in Canyon City. I always like to tell people it's an event of hope, connection, and healing. It's amazing to see the people come together and show support for one another and realize how much suicide has affected so many people, not just in our community, but surrounding areas as well. Registration begins at 9 o'clock with the walk to begin at 10. It's about a 4-mile walk, but you walk just as far as you can and can turn around and come back anytime to the park. We'll also have a silent auction with lots of great donations from local communities as well as businesses from Pueblo. Our own Carrie Canterbury will be our photographer at the event. She's also one of my committee members that makes all of this possible. We have a memory board where you can share a picture or a message to your loved one. There's no fee to walk. It is a fundraiser for the American Foundation for Suicide. There's no minimum amount to fundraise. We'd just love to have you come join us for this very meaningful and special event. I'd like to end with a poem about the Out of the Darkness walk. Out of the darkness and into the light, not a battle we choose, but one we will fight. We've all lost a loved one to this hidden foe, so out of the darkness in numbers we go. We raise awareness as we walk the walk and fight against stigmas still plaguing most talk. Each suicide victim, a dear precious soul who battled a darkness that took a great toll. Suicide victims can't utter a word, but we are survivors and we can be heard. The stigma must end and awareness must rise. We carry this message with tears in our eyes. From all walks of life, we now gather for them and shine in their honor with light from within. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. And take note that in 2021 in Fremont County, it says it documented 21 suicides in Fremont County. That's a lot.
That's a lot. That's too many.
Very sobering, and I think it's probably safe to say probably every single person in this room has been affected closely by the suicide of a loved one. And so thank you for your awareness and helping
Thank you.
to save future lives
Thank you. I appreciate you guys.
and honoring those that have gone on. We would like to read a proclamation.
Okay.
I'd love to invite the City Council to all participate in reading this proclamation. Emily, if you don't mind, or Council Member Tracy, to start us off, and we'll just work our way around.
Thanks. Office of the Mayor, Proclamation, National Suicide Prevention Month, September 2022. Whereas Canyon City is home to more than 16,000 people, a place of destination for thousands of visitors annually, and the site of about a dozen state and federal correctional facilities nearby, and
Whereas the Fremont County Coroner reported 21 suicides were investigated in 2021, one of which was an offender in the state or federal prison, and
Whereas Fremont County's average number of deaths by suicide typically is 24 to 30 per year.
Whereas 90% of those who died by suicide had a diagnosable mental health condition at the time of their death, according to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and
Whereas in 2020, suicide was Colorado's 8th leading cause of death and the 2nd leading cause of death for ages 10 to 44, and
Whereas 8 times as many people died by suicide in 2019 than in alcohol-related motor vehicle accidents, and whereas on average there are 132 suicides per day in the U.S., and
whereas 54% of Americans have been affected by suicide in some way.
Now therefore, let it be proclaimed by Canyon City Mayor Ashley Smith that September 2022 is hereby designated as National Suicide Prevention Month in Canyon City. Mayor Smith and the Canyon City Council do urge all people of Canyon City to become educated on suicide prevention awareness and support those affected by suicide during this month and throughout the year. Jessica, I have a proclamation that's signed for you. Would you like to bring your pictures of Dalton, and maybe we'll take a picture
Yeah.
together with you? Ryan Stevens, could you please review our consent agenda?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Members of council, item 8A is to approve the minutes for the regular city council meeting on August 15th, the Vision Committee meeting on August 17th, and the special meetings August 8th and 22 of the Energy Committee, and August 16th, 17th regarding the Cotter tour. 8B is to ratify the city administrator's signature on a professional services agreement with Baseline Engineering Corporation. 8C awards bid 4222 Dell server and storage array to Xbyte Technologies in an amount not to exceed $55,055. 8D awards bid 4422 Dell computers and monitors to Rocket Drop LLC in an amount not to exceed $8,238.15. 8E is to award bid 4522 Motorola radios to Motorola Solutions in an amount not to exceed $253,530.10. And 8F is to receive and file a list of bills.
Thank you. Before we open up to questions, I thought, Elijah, do you want to come up and address us about some of these IT purchases? And then we can address the questions too while you're up here. What do we need to know?
So, good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. The two items on the consent agenda from the IT department this evening are the Dell computers and monitors and the Dell server and storage array. So the computers and monitors bid is for replacement of aged machines at the public library. The machines that are available for public use at the library are well beyond their life expectancy and due for replacement. We did replace 3 of those units last year to a different form factor computer, and it has been working out pretty well over there. We have less issues with the hardware, less maintenance tickets, and the public seem to be utilizing them quite well. So we are replacing the rest of the machines in their entirety, both upstairs in the children's lab and downstairs in the main computer lab with the same model. So that should completely refresh the library's public machines. The other bid for the server and storage array is 2 different pieces. The server is also for the library. It would be their main file share server and the application server that runs the public use system for the computer labs at the library. And then the storage array portion of that bid would be for primary data storage at the police department. The storage array at the police department now is also aged beyond its life expectancy and due for replacement. That particular array is in use at City Hall here at a different location, so we wanted to make sure we had the same model in both locations to unify our system. Makes it easier for management and patches and whatnot. So the interesting thing about that bid, it went out to quite a few vendors. We actually only had 1 vendor bid the appropriate requested hardware. So that's why you'll see on the bid tab that there is one that's quite a bit lower than the rest of them. The other bids that we received were for a brand new model of hardware that just came out. So because we did not request that and we didn't budget that amount, we are recommending the award for what we requested. And both of these projects were planned for and budgeted in this year's budget, and both of them came in under the requested budget.
That's unusual news these days.
Yes, it's fantastic. The other portion of that is, to my knowledge, we should receive all the hardware within 30 days as well. So, also unheard of.
Wonderful. Councilmember Tracy?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I just had a question on the detail of cash disbursements, not in regard to what Elijah just presented,
Okay.
so I
Are
don't
there
know.
any questions for Elijah? Okay,
Okay.
We'll fast forward, we'll come right back. Councilmember Schmisher.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had 2 quick comments and then 1 question. One, just thank you for the work that you do. Oftentimes, the information technology is behind the scenes, and I feel like we barely see it, let alone the general public, but so much of what you do keeps our city, not only all of the departments, but the city itself running, and just really appreciate the time and effort that you and your department put into it.
Thank you. I'll pass
Absolutely.
that along as well.
The other quick comment that I had was just about our library. In addition to the books that are there, that computer lab is fantastic. And I know every time I go down there, there are people using it. And I highly encourage people, if you need free notary services, or if you need to print things, or if you need to scan things. The printing and the scanning is not free, but it's reasonably priced, and use of the computers is free. So just public service announcement that the library is not just about books and videos. It has a lot to offer our community. And then my one question was just, I know you had mentioned that the storage arrays have kind of aged out. What's the expected lifespan of these new storage arrays, especially given that they aren't kind of the, as you mentioned, top of the line, but a little bit more within the reasonable budget?
Right. The expected life expectancy is roughly 5 to 7 years. We intend on replacing all of our critical infrastructure within 5 years, or at the 5-year mark.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other questions for Elijah? All right, thank you, Elijah.
Thank you.
We'll circle back to you, Councilmember Tracy.
Thanks. I just had one question regarding one item on it's item 8F. It's on the detail of cash disbursements. Just wondered if City Administrator Stevens could say a little bit about Sun Central and the expenditure to them.
Yeah, the Sun Central is our subscription to a solar array. We're subscribed to 2 solar arrays, and they offset the city's electric bill through those 2 subscriptions.
So is this an annual amount on the list there?
They bill us monthly.
So that's a monthly amount. Does the city have a way of calculating to what extent or in what ways this subscription or these subscriptions are saving on our regular electric bill?
We can do that analysis, yeah.
That might be helpful. The regular electric bills are quite a bit of money every month. This month, $16,000 and some to Black Hills. So just be helpful maybe to know in the future a little bit more about how these subscriptions contribute to saving the city a little money. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick.
Yes, I just had a comment on the Baseline Engineering Corporation contract. And this is a suggestion for future contracts, but in there on page 3, right above item 7, indemnification, we talk about the failure on the part of the consultant to procure or maintain insurance required. And it would seem to me that it would also, because we're dealing with licensed professionals, that it would be good to have a clause in there that similar to that for failure to maintain required licenses. And that's my comment.
Does that need an amendment when we vote to approve, or is that?
No, I'm not suggesting that we amend the contract. This is just for future, future contracts, that when we're dealing with professional engineer type licenses or similar licenses.
Anybody that has a certification of some kind.
Yes, that we also make that a requirement of the contract.
Sounds good. Thank you. I would like to invite Chief Schick up to talk to us about the radios for the CCPD.
They're durable. That's
I
why
was
we
gonna say,
want.
that's a object lesson. They will go through a lot.
Madam
more
Mayor,
than that.
members of council, thank you for allowing me to say a few words. The cost of these radios has not been lost on the PD. It's a significant investment. When we're talking about emergency communications, we can't overstate the significance of those communications and the reliability and durability of radios that we carry is ultimately can be life-saving or life-ending. So we took it pretty seriously. We tested and evaluated. Commander Van Dyke oversaw and coordinated the test and evaluation of Motorola's radios versus Kenwood radios. And not being a real tech-savvy person, I can tell you that you get what you pay for. And the moment you picked up the radios, that was quite apparent. Just the the contrast between Kenwood and Motorola. The Motorola's were much more robust and just felt like a tool compared to the Kenwoods. I won't say anything negative, but I can't say that I felt the same confidence. Our members, line personnel, all the way up to command staff, tested and evaluated the radios, and overwhelmingly, everyone supported moving forward with the Motorola's. We had failures, connectivity failures with Kenwood. We had no connectivity failures with Motorola. As reported, the Kenwood units, the switches were loose. No longevity for testing, and if you need more explanation on that, Mike Coleman from Motorola came up to join us this evening, or came down, I should say, from Denver area. But as he would explain, the Kenwood series versus the Motorola, you take this radio and it endures every test Motorola has. That radio. Every radio Kenwood test, they do one test, they replace it with a new radio. So every test gets a new radio, where Motorola's runs the gamut of the test. So a little more confidence there in terms of longevity. I talked about the loss of connectivity. No emergency find feature, find me on a locator on the Kenwood radios as compared to the Motorola's. Kenwood customer service left quite a bit to be desired, according to Commander Van Dyke. We had the Smart Connect, which is a future Wi-Fi connectivity that's available to this option radio, which is why we selected one that's going to allow us to move forward with the technological advances. That Wi-Fi connectivity is a smart feature that will toggle between the radio signal and a Wi-Fi signal if the radio signal fails. So as we move forward and that evolves, we'll be eligible to have that. The emergency find me locator, I kind of briefed over that. Kenwood doesn't have it. If this radio becomes lost, we can use that feature to locate the radio. God forbid it's ever lost with an officer, we can do the same thing. So we're real impressed with that. And just as a closing thought, Motorola radios are been in production since 1928, headquartered in Chicago, and factories are in Florida. With all of that said, I stand ready to answer your questions, Commander Van Dyke or Mr. Coleman, but that's our recommendation with regards to our emergency communications.
Chief, I think it's probably prudent to let the public know that the radios that are being replaced,
Yes, ma'am.
we got those from Pueblo when the Pueblo Police Department were done with their radios and retired them out.
We did indeed, yes,
And
ma'am.
how many, I don't know, how many years have we had them since Pueblo retired
How
them?
many years has it been, Elliot? How many years since we got these radios from Pueblo? 2018.
So we,
Radios were initially manufactured back in the early 1990s. 2003 through 2014 is when the main production of that XDS line was. 2019 is when they went out of service.
we went out.
You got there when you couldn't repair them.
Yeah, and we've been limping along since, and now we can't, it's virtually impossible to find replacement parts, so it's,
So we, I mean, yeah, I just felt that was important to know that.
yes,
I mean,
ma'am.
we are.
I agree.
We're doing everything we can to save, and now is the time to
Yes,
make a
ma'am.
future investment.
I think
Mike,
it's,
would you like to come up and address the council as well about Motorola? I'd be curious to know how long these radios should last our police department. Anything else that you'd like us to know?
Madam Mayor, Council, thank you for your time. My name is Mike Coleman. I'm with Bearcom Communication, Motorola's channel partner. My partner, Lane Feingold, is on line if we have any questions. He couldn't get down in time to make your meeting. I sat in the role of a deputy sheriff for many years. I carried the radios. I had non-Motorola. I had Motorola radios. I know which ones worked, which ones didn't. In doing this, like I mentioned, the radios that you're carrying were hand-me-downs when they were no longer even serviceable. Couldn't get parts for them, things like that. And Motorola, as an innovator in public safety technology, takes pride in future-proofing as best as you can. Because like with IT or things like that, we talk to folks about probably 7-year life cycle on radios, but the predecessor, like the commander was talking about, to this one that was made in the late 90s, there's still over 4,000 in use today on the statewide radio system in Colorado. So it shows you the durability and long life cycle that you need, and the criticality of the communications that public safety provides through the Motorola radios is unparalleled. All I can suggest is that when you look at that type of a technology, you have a comfort factor that your public safety in the middle of the night, when it's raining or snowing, and they need to be able to communicate with dispatch or each other, they'll be able to do that. And there's no better gift that you can give public safety than to give them tools to make their jobs safer and more efficient. We're proud to be a partner in that.
And how long do you anticipate this radio being able to be in production and to get parts and to
Sorry,
last for our?
I know you asked that
Yeah.
earlier, I got off there. We suggest, you look at a 7-year replacement cycle, but you've got radios that are still operating, and that your parts are gonna be based upon what's available to Motorola at the time also. So with chips or components that they need, they've got stuff now that they're not being able to repair that is at the 10-year mark. So I would hope that you get more than 7. I would hope that you get more than 10 on these radios.
Okay. Councilmember Schmischer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I noticed in your proposal that the estimated delivery time is 12 to 16 weeks, and I know that estimated delivery times these days can change and can frequently face delays, and I was just wondering if that still holds true, if you think that they'll be able to be delivered in that timeframe.
I would say that it's conservative. It's hard to guess right now, only because it's based upon lithium for the batteries, a lot of the chips for the components and that. Based upon what I've seen as of, we were talking about this Friday, the delivery of some other models of radios are shortening up. So right now, this tier of radios would probably still stay within that. I would like to see it well before the end of the year where they can be programmed, put in use, go through training. Your officers will want to have a little bit of education on the transition between this to this.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. These radios are standalone units, but they do communicate with the base station and go into the system from there. Is there any virtue to looking at trying to get a part of the radios? In other words, doing like if you had to replace all 50, if you did 7 radios a year, are there any communication issues that might pop up between using different models of radios and these?
When you look at the technology in the radio, it all operates on what you guys operate on, the statewide digital trunk radio network. So they can talk anywhere in the state, and they can talk to anybody that operates on that system.
And that's standard?
That's standard, yeah. There's a national standard that also actually Canadians adopted. They just have a different standard number so that they could go through that process. And then there are other channels that they have access to that give them nationwide interoperability.
And so my question is kind of a budgetary one because, if we only had to replace 7 radios a year rather than all 50, it might make things a little bit smoother for a certain city administrator and police chief.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you very much. We appreciate your time to come here and to
Sure.
answer our questions.
Thank you for your work for these guys.
We are very proud of our police department in Canyon City, that's for sure, and take public safety very seriously. With that, I would like to entertain a motion to approve our consent agenda. Councilmember Schmischer.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve our consent agenda and agenda as written.
I second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? I'll call a vote.
Councilmember Dennehy?
Aye.
Schmischer?
Aye.
Stein?
Aye.
Tracy?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick?
Aye.
Thank you, council. Ryan, do you have an administrator's report for us?
We have, you have the written report in your packet. I was going to mention the meeting with Colorado Parks and Wildlife as well. You know, the one thing that one thing that they did mention regarding fencing was that, you know, they thought a 6-foot fence was adequate, especially if it is a picket fence, because wildlife typically does not like to jump to where they cannot see. So having that opaqueness there with the picket fence, once, you know, our current fencing standards should be adequate to keep most wildlife out of backyards. With that, I would be happy to answer any other questions regarding the written report.
Could you give us an update on the East Roads Stormwater Project?
The East Roads Stormwater Project, they are currently funneling the ditch water away from the project. They've rerouted it a little bit so that they can continue to work. We were expecting them to actually stop working during this time until the ditch is turned off, so they've found a way to continue to work. As they get towards East Main, the project's going to get a whole lot more complicated. There's a lot of moving parts there, rerouting all the different utility lines, and then we're still working through clearance with the railroad as well. So we've got some the engineers going back and forth with the railroad about some of their questions. So, but the project is continuing to move along, and but as I said, you know, we're getting to a point where public may see some slowdown in what's happening down there, but you know, a lot of that has to do with the complexity of what's coming up next.
Thank you. Councilmember Tracy?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. City Administrator Stevens, on the second page of your written report under the water treatment section, there's the mention of the fact that on August 13th, the plant lost power for 2.5 hours. Was that the same date where there was the more widespread power outage in the city for several hours?
I would have to go back and cross-reference dates. That sounds about right, but I'd have to double-check.
That's kind of what I thought, too. I just wondered if we ever heard from Black Hills Energy what the cause of that outage was.
What they are reporting to the public and what they're sharing is that it was a microburst, and it was centralized to a specific location that impacted not North Canyon, but you know, the downtown part of Canyon and Old Canyon.
It was the 13th that our house lost power.
So microburst as in a microburst as part of a storm that
storm
did
event.
something to their equipment, or do we know anything more than that?
That they wouldn't share any additional information beyond that.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick?
Gee whiz, I had a question.
No feeling.
Oh, can you fill us in on what activities CDOT are up to out there at our corner of 3rd and Main?
I believe there was a logging truck that may have hit one of the lights out there today.
Oh, so it's a light repair
Yes.
type issue.
Good
And it's my understanding CDOT was planning on coming through town to do some light updates, so that may be happening a little bit sooner now.
That intersection, that's trouble. Councilmember Schmischer?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had a question under the planning and zoning portion of your report with regard to the 3rd Street Main and 3rd bump outs, Clock Tower Plaza. I was curious as to when that RFP will close.
RFP, so we got some news from CDOT today, so we may actually have to pull that RFP until all of the grant paperwork is completed. So we've been awarded the grant, but all the IGA and everything else that goes with it, they have a backlog of up to 90 days, so we may have to pull the RFP and put it back out towards the end of the year. So unfortunate
That's really
news.
unfortunate.
Yeah.
I don't like this phase of where we're going with of having to stall RFPs and getting bids, and I'm really frustrated about. I mean, it was the pedestrian crossing and all of these. It's stagnating our progress.
It certainly is. Unfortunately, some of these funding sources, we're moving at the pace of the funding source.
Well, be diligent and persistent, and we, as soon as we can get through it, I think we just definitely want to be responsive on our part.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Ryan, I had a question on, and this is on the, under cash disbursements. The water fund had to pay $143,400 to fix that drain line failure. And I was just wondering, do we have enough backup in that fund for problems like this going forward?
We do. We have a capital reserve in the water fund for this particular project because of some of the delays in getting products and cost overruns. We were able to reallocate funds for this year, but we are still expecting some additional expenses to come in regarding that emergency fix, and either the next meeting or the meeting in October, Travis Payne, our water superintendent, is planning on doing a presentation to council to walk you through everything that happened and what those expenses are.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, let's now move on to item number 10, and that's actually the only item we have for city council business today. And that's 10A, an introduction and adoption by title only of Resolution 12, Series of 2022, entitled, "A Resolution of the City of Canyon City, Colorado, approving a water tap fee reduction for Loaves and Fishes Ministries."
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members of council, this is a resolution to reduce the water tap fee for the Loaves and Fishes expansion project. This is a 50% reduction in that water tap fee, and this is a good community project, and I believe Dee Dee Clement is here if there are any other additional questions.
Come on up, Dee Dee, and tell us what's happening at Loaves and Fishes. I'd like to hear a little bit, too, about this summer and the numbers that you've been experiencing at the shelter as well.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. So as you know, construction for our emergency shelter completed, and total construction costs came to, just let me get that for you, $1,270,000. And one of the things, we had some unexpected costs, and one of them was the water line. We had thought our tap was large enough when we went into this, and then discovered later that it wasn't, and so that's why we're requesting maybe a reduction in our water line fee. The good news is that out of that $1,270,000, we received just under about $920,000 in grants, and then we received some funds from within our community and donors, local donors, and then Loaves and Fishes had reserve funds, and so we don't have a loan or anything out on the project, so that's good news for us, and we're excited about that. The shelter expansion increased our bed capacity to 38, and last night there were 27 people that stayed in our shelter. There were 25 adults and 2 children that were in our shelter. So it is being used, and so that's good news too. That's what we wanted. We wanted to get people off the streets and coming into our shelter. And the other good news is that it didn't go to max capacity immediately, even though we know that there are more than 38 people who are experiencing homelessness in our community. We still have space to allow more people to come. So excited about that. The other thing just want to mention is this September, the September 25th, we're actually having a groundbreaking, September 23rd, we're actually having a groundbreaking ceremony. Our board of directors decided to continue on with phase 2 and phase 3 of our project over at Loaves and Fishes. So phase 2 is we're going to expand our our warehouse, or actually build a warehouse where our current emergency shelter is that used our warehouse space. And we'll go back to having a food pantry and a large storage area for food, and then we'll have clothing and things like that again. Construction for that should be happening, I want to say, October 24th. And then once that's completed, then we'll finish the expansion project, which is our navigation center. And so the navigation center is the place where people who are currently experiencing homelessness can go during the day and have access to laundry facilities, have showers, get connected to resources, those types of things. I think, as we have said over and over and over again, the best way to help someone is actually to build a relationship with them, come alongside of them, and just kind of help them through the process. And so this navigation center will allow us to do that. So excited about all of those things. And again, the hope would be is by 2023, those projects hopefully will both be done. And then, like I said, the groundbreaking ceremony of 23rd, and we're also doing an open house. And all of you guys are welcome to attend that, and that will be at 2 o'clock, and it's going to be a catered event, and we're really excited. So we don't normally have catered events. So Health Colorado said that they would take care of our catering. So we're like, yes, thank you, Health Colorado, for covering that fee there. So, so the numbers, as Mayor Smith asked about, on our by name list, and I know over the last several months I've talked a lot about our by name list. By name list is a list of individuals that we know in our community who are experiencing homelessness. We have 182 individuals on that list. We also know that there are 36 individuals that aren't on the list that are, as far as we know, they're experiencing homelessness. We've given them outreach meals, things like that. We try to engage. We can't confirm if they're homeless or not. Our assumption is that they are homeless, and our hope is that as we build those relationships, they'll complete the paperwork so we can get them on the by name list. So if you add those 36, then that brings our total to 218 is where we're at right now. We are working really hard. We're still at functional zero for our veterans. We have 2 veterans on our by name list. Both of them have a housing resource. The hope is that they'll transition into housing, and then we'll be back to 0. We're working hard on ending chronic homelessness. Our hope is that we could be at 10 by the end of the year. Currently, we're at 22 chronic homeless individuals in our community. I think it's worth pointing out that out of those 22 people, 14 of them have a housing resource, and we're just waiting to find a place for them to move in. And so when you take 22 minus 14, that gives you 8, and you're like, it's really doable. It is really doable to get down to functional 0 in our community. So our goal is 10 by the end of the year, and then we've set a big, bold goal of July of next year to reach functional 0 for our chronic, and then we'll work on the next population. That's what we do, right? We go from one to another and take the things that we've learned and apply it to the next group. So lots of community collaboration. You guys know all that. You've seen all that. So anyway, I don't know if there's anything else you'd like for me to talk about. I could go on, but I thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Oh, sure.
Councilmember Schmischer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you so much as well, Dee Dee, for being here. We really appreciate it and really appreciate the work that you do in our community and the heart that you have for this underserved population. I think sometimes it can be confusing when there are different definitions, and I was wondering if you could just define chronic homelessness, just so that folks are all on the same page about that, because it's a really worthwhile and admirable goal that you have.
Yeah, and it's probably even worthwhile to define homelessness. So for us, we use what's called the HUD definition, and that means literally homeless, meaning that you are staying in an emergency shelter, you're sleeping in your car or outside or in a tent or in a place that would be considered uninhabitable. So that could be a shed, that could be a trailer that has no hookups, like it's just parked on the road someplace. So that's what we would call homeless. Couch surfing does not count as homelessness for us in the world that we live in. For chronic homeless means that you have been homeless for a year or longer and that you have some type of disabling condition. So it's both. You have to be homeless a year or longer and a disabling condition. The other thing is, for that year or longer, you can have 4 episodes of homelessness over a 3-year period that comes to 12 months. So you still need to be homeless for 12 months. So yeah, that is a difference, yep.
Thank you so much.
So we have, working towards veterans homelessness, which we're at functional 0. We're working towards chronic homelessness. What about the other almost 200 that are experiencing homelessness in Fremont County?
Yeah, so I think obviously there's a team involved, right? But I guess my hope would be is that once we reach chronic homeless, or once we reach functional 0 for our chronic homelessness, we wouldn't necessarily focus on a specific population. We would then focus on ending homelessness for all. And so we would work on the families with children. We would work for the people that are not chronic, that maybe are just a single adult, that kind of thing. And so wouldn't necessarily focus on a specific target, that we would actually just focus on all people homeless. But again, there's a whole team that will be making that decision, and it's not necessarily my choice, or my decision to make, but that would be something that I think I would like to see.
What kind of trends have you seen this year concerning our homeless population?
Yeah, so it's interesting. We have an improvement team meeting, and all of you are invited to that, and that will be coming up this Thursday. I believe it's at 1 o'clock. It's a Zoom meeting. Community leaders are encouraged to participate, because in order for us to end homelessness, we need community leaders to be involved. So at the last meeting, there were some questions about what does our homeless population look like here in Fremont County? And at the time, we didn't necessarily have a lot of, we had the data, but we just weren't ready to present. And so since then, Jennifer Jones, who is knows everything about data, she just tracks that stuff really well. We know that out of the 280-some people that I mentioned that were 82 that were homeless, in our community, 75% of them, and Jennifer's going to give you the hard numbers on Thursday, so I could be a little off here, but 75% of them are actually unemployed, whereas other communities, that may not be their story. They may actually be employed. And so 25% are employed or have some type of income. So when we think about next steps, like what do we need to do to end homelessness in our community? Yes, housing is part of it, but people have to be able to pay rent and have to be able to pay utilities and all this other kind of stuff, right? And so there almost needs to be a conversation about what can we do to engage these 75% of people who are unemployed? What's stopping them from getting a job? It could be a lot of things. I mean, we hear over and over the fact that they haven't been able to take showers. We've just now opened our showers to people who are having to stay on the street so they can come to Loaves and Fishes and take a shower. But for months, they weren't able to do that. And so that's a barrier. Laundry is a barrier. I think low self-esteem is a barrier. We could go on and on and on. And so I think that is something that probably needs to be talked about, like, okay, what do we do to help those folks find jobs? Because they're not necessarily incapable of working. They're just right now not working. The other thing that she discovered was the age group. And she is going to be actually able to give you a better number than what I'm going to give you tonight. But I want to say it's between the age group for us in Fremont County, it's like 36 to 44 employable age, right? That's when people should be working. And so that's good news, because now we have information, so now we can go about and figure out the solutions to get these people to work, right? And so anyway, I'm glad about that, and so I figure now we can just come up with some next steps. We, as in all of us, right? Not just Loaves and Fishes and not just a few people in our community, but all of us come up with some ideas about how we can end that. So we are seeing summer is also, back to your question, Madam Mayor, is, we are seeing new people coming to our community. They come here for all kinds of reasons. They just heard, they've had family members that live here. They stay with their family members for a couple of weeks, and after a while they have to leave. Sometimes people are just driving through and they just land here for all kinds of reasons. We'll see what happens in the fall and when winter comes, if we'll see a transition out of our community and go from there. So I'll keep you posted.
Any other questions? Thank you for all the work you do and your plethora of team members that are working to help solve homelessness. I know it takes a lot of passion, a lot of resilience and persistence. Thank you for sticking it out.
Yeah, I would say most of the service providers in our community are involved in some way in the Built for Zero movement. It is exciting to see. It is not, like I said, a loaves and fishes problem to solve. There is a group of people who are trying to solve it. So that's encouraging to me, right, that we're coming together and trying to solve this problem, so, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
And with that, I'd like to entertain a motion. Councilmember Dennehy?
Madam Mayor, thank you. I'd like to make a motion that we approve, pass Resolution 12 of 2022, the reduction of tap fees for loaves and fishes.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Councilmember Tracy, did you have something for us?
Motion on a second.
Oh, wonderful. Any other discussion? I'll call a vote.
Councilmember Dennehy?
Aye.
Schmisher?
Aye.
Stein?
Aye.
Tracy?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick?
Aye.
Excellent. Congratulations, Loaves and Fishes. Best of luck in your expansion, and this meeting is adjourned.